Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joining today from Fitchburg Fire Station number 3, it looks like. Maybe 2.
Yes, 3.
Either I knew that and I just had to go with it. It's Adam Dorn, Fitchburg Fire Department. Dorn, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm well.
Fantastic. We're going to get into talking about the importance of Fire Prevention Week, but how it all kind of got started. And we talked a little bit about this in the beginning of the week. But as we wrap up this week, which, by the way, thank you for sharing all the great information. Hopefully you had a chance to go back and watch some of that and pick up some great information. But the history behind this, sad, but, kind of set the path forward, if you will, to fire prevention. So we've got 2 different fires to talk about today. First one we'll start with is the Chicago fire. And that kind of got the kickoff of Fire Prevention Week.
Yeah. So the Great Chicago Fire happened on October 8th, 1871. During that fire, it killed more than 250 people, left 100,000 people homeless, destroyed more than 17,000 structures, and burned more than 2,000 acres of land. So it's a pretty big deal. Some of the other interesting things about this is that, right, there's all these different aspects of, how did it start and this, that, and the other thing. So it's claimed to have started around 8:30 at night on October 8th in or around a small barn that was belonging to the O'Leary family that bordered the alley behind DeCoven Street. From there, you could say the rest is history. Supposedly, there was a strong storm and all sorts of stuff had taken place that day. But the most popular tale blames Mrs. O'Leary's cow, who allegedly knocked over this lantern that was in the barn, causing the barn to start on fire. And from there, it would just spread to one building to the next, which in fire service terms is called a conflagration.
And to date, there's been a lot of horrific fires, and by no means is one better than the other or anything to that effect. But comparing that to today, do we see fires like that in the U.S.? Maybe not to that level, but is it because of fire prevention we're doing better? Is it what's changed over the years? And loaded question, I know, but in all seriousness, it's technology, things, education, all gotten better.
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. It is a lot of different aspects put together, right? A lot of it is fire prevention because we learned a lot of things from this fire and other fires that have happened. It's from that prevention or that learning process, we said, okay, well, we need to make sure we engineer buildings so that they do this or they don't do this in the future. So it's safer. And it's not just from fire prevention. We looked at it from building standards, right? We need to be able to do this and not do these things. And just plain safety, the fire safety that we've been talking about, that all plays into this too. It was in a barn. We still don't have jurisdiction over barns, so to say, when it comes to agricultural needs. But if we're repurposing barns to be used for other stuff, we can come in and say, okay, this is what needs to be in place now because of that, because we don't want stuff to happen. As far as a conflagration, that's a hard word to say, by the way.
It is a very hard word to say.
So when you have large fires like that, right, and they just spread so fast to all these different buildings, we have been very fortunate through all the prevention and building safety measures that have been put in place. We rarely see this kind of a thing. I mean, we haven't really seen this since this happened. But now when you look back, and I think there were some places, maybe New York, Baltimore, some of your larger, older cities, they've had fires where you get into, the fire spreads to 6 or 7, maybe 8 buildings, all in one row. That could be considered something very similar to this. So yeah, it's not very often that it does happen, but it does happen, but not to this scale either.
And it's good that, unfortunately, this event happened and it is, but, coming out of it, the fire prevention week and fire prevention in itself has gotten better because of this. And does the department take that same mentality today for all the calls you guys go to, and take that knowledge and keep reapplying it, and of course passing on your knowledge too, because not everything's in a textbook either?
Yeah, I would say we do. I mean, we look back at this and go, okay, yeah, that was a really bad event, right? What can we do to prevent something like this from happening again? But also, we look back at the history of some of our tools, how we use our tools, why we use certain tools. One of our favorite tools is the Halligan bar, but that was actually designed and made by, I believe he ended up being a Chief Halligan of the fire department of New York, right? So we take that history. It's a great tool that's done so much, but that's been 100 years now that tool's been in use by the fire service. And why do we use it this way? How do we use it? What don't we use it for, right? Being able to pass that along as part of a tradition, it's also just part of our general knowledge that we need to know. There's been some different changes to it that's been tried over the years, but it genuinely comes back to, we all still like the true Halligan bar. So yeah, we do take what we learn from the past and currently, and we apply that to ourselves and our future. And we like to teach the people, our new people, why we do the things that we do.
Yeah. And looking back at the history, there was a same night almost. Was it the same night, I believe?
It was.
That Wisconsin actually had a devastating forest fire. Tell us a little bit about that one, Dorn.
Yeah, so the fire that happened in Wisconsin happened up in Peshtigo on October 8th, 1871, same date. It actually receives very little, but it receives little notice outside of the Wisconsin, Michigan, like the Midwest area, because the Great Chicago Fire happened to be taking place at the same time. And it hogged the headlines because it was in this great metropolitan area at the time. Wisconsin at 1871 was not very well established. I mean, there weren't a lot of people up there. There were a lot of people there, but not as many as in Chicago. So it didn't impact as many people overall, but it killed 1,200 people. 1,200 people. And that fire, if you basically take Green Bay and you draw a line straight across over to Lake Michigan, all the way up to Sturgeon Bay, that whole portion of Wisconsin was on fire. And then if you take Green Bay, you take that same line on the bottom and you go out to basically like the Oconto River, and you go straight up to basically just a little bit north of Peshtigo. That huge block up there, that was all on fire. I don't remember. It's 1.2 million acres.
It went all the way to Michigan.
Yeah,
from
it
the
went
data
all the way up
that
to
I'm
Michigan.
looking up, like it's extensive. And just your comment, I guess, really quick, Doran, when we're looking at wildfires, the changes in climate, everything else, have you guys been training on that, or have you been learning more about that? Because we're seeing it out west, we're sending resources out west, but I don't think it's just going to be a west thing down the road. I'd be concerned overall, but how do you address or look at that, the outdoor forest fire type of situations?
Yeah, it's really different in Wisconsin because we have some very heavily wooded areas, forests, right? But we also have some areas that are not very heavily wooded. One of the things when we build cities and towns or municipalities, right, trees tend to get cut down and we just kind of sprawl. Now, I think there's more of a consensus to try and leave as many trees as we can as we build. But realistically, we don't have a lot of what we call an urban interface, where we have natural vegetation areas very, very close to urban spaces. So what I can think of up here is like we have the Dunn's Marsh area, right? If something happens there, we're going to have some small issues to deal with between housing and the natural area. But when we look at that, that looks really bad. But in the grand scheme of things, that's really not a large scale thing that people deal with out west. So I think out west has a completely different outlook on it than what we do.
Well,
They're
drier
dealing with a lot
conditions too, right?
much drier
Drier.
conditions, and I think that's one of the bigger aspects of this.
Yeah. Well, we had kind of a drier summer this year, and definitely we spent more time this year talking about being careful of outside burning and those sort of things. But you know, we can see that in past history, there's a reason that we talk about these things. And as we wrap up your final thoughts on fire prevention, you know, it's because of tragedies and past events that really help us change those outcomes hopefully in the future. And we can do better. We'll always do better.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? If we don't learn from our past, if we don't look at our past and say, okay, what went right, what went wrong, what could we do different? If we don't do that, we're not going to make things better. But it's also the fact that we need to look at that and say, yeah, it's okay that we didn't do something well, but that doesn't mean we get rid of it either. We have to accept that for what it was and use it as a learning point moving forward. So I think with that and all the other new technologies in fire prevention and safety and new ideas, and you know, if we embrace those things, I think we're going to be safer as we move forward.
All right, Adam, that's about as deep as it gets right there. We'll end it there. We're going to keep talking fire prevention all year long. We always do, each and every month. So, you know, definitely fun to have you talking about some of these things. And again, more information, Doran. If people want to learn more, just quickly on the resources you do have out there, you have it at the website, you got it at social media. How can people stay up to date on what's going on in the fire world?
Yeah, social media, you can check out our Facebook page. We try to keep that up to date. Try not to put too much out there because we don't want to bombard people with information every single day. But we try to put the important stuff out there. On our website, we have links to NFPA and the safety center. I call it the safety center there, where you have access to the kids material, the whole 9 yards. And we've got some tips out there. The World Wide Web is just full of information. Can always look stuff up out there too. So it's all over the place, but if you need to get a hold of us, you can always email us at fire@fitchburgwi.gov or go on our website and, you know, find us that way as well.
All right, Doran, thank you so much for your time as always. And we'll look forward to talking to you coming up next month.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jeremy.
You betcha. We're going to take a quick break. More to come. You're watching Talking Fitchburg.